The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
Okay, let's go.
Happy Monday, everybody. I hope everybody had a good weekend, and let's get into it. So I'm going to start off today talking. This is like the gift that keeps giving. Term limits. Oh my God, it just will not go away. But over the weekend, actually, I think on Friday, it came out that Nancy Pelosi, ironically, somebody I mentioned in previous episode as, a career politician and really somebody that, quite frankly, along with all the career politicians, once, they've been in office 40 years and they're getting into their 80s and they're still wanting to work, you kind of have to question that and try and understand, why is that the case, especially when most of these people are worth north of 50 to 100 to $200 million. But anyway, it came out that she is going to seek re-election in 2024 to Congress. And then more importantly than that, what I thought was just, again, a red flag for me was she came out defending or actually criticizing all of the people that were saying Dianne Feinstein, who again is 90 years old, criticizing the people that were criticizing her to retire. In an interview with the New York Times, she says, and I quote, "Dianne comes along and they're making such a fuss. Uh-oh, it's a guy thing. But that's the way the world is," unquote. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi said in support of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Again, let's call a spade, and Dianne Feinstein has recently signed over power of attorney for all of her affairs to her daughter. So she obviously does not feel that she is capable of managing her own affairs, but yet she feels capable of being a senator and managing the affairs of the United States of America. Again, just think about that. I don't want to keep hitting on this, but what's great about this is at the same time that Nancy Pelosi came out and said she's going to run again at the age of 83, she's supporting Dianne Feinstein at the age of 90, saying, oh, it's not a big deal. She's fine. They're making a big fuss of it. It's a guy's world. Come on, that's ridiculous. But at the same time, on the other side, you've got Republican Senate Minority Leader from the great state of Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, who was getting interviewed, and the press was asking him, hey, can you tell us what's going on? This is the second time you've frozen up. What's up with your health? What is the diagnosis? And oh my God, he just deflected it. The reporter was incredibly respectful, and he said, the people of Kentucky deserve to hear with a level of transparency what's going on with your health. And he immediately just deflected it to his doctor, Dr. Monahan. He said, Dr. Monahan covered it. He gave me a clean bill of health. If there's anything you need, talk to him. The reporter pushed a little more and said, hey, we'd like to hear from you. Why don't you tell us what's going on? You're here right now. And again, he continued to just say, Dr. Monahan, ask him. And then he literally walked out of the press conference. That's not appropriate. That is not appropriate. It actually reminds me of, President Biden. He walks out of press conferences almost on a daily basis when questions start getting asked. That's just weird. This is weird stuff. You cannot walk out of press conferences when you are in such a position of power representing our country. Anyway, I would highly encourage you to really look at this thing from a common sense perspective. And again, like I said, it's across the board. Maybe the answer is you no longer can be in the Senate after the age of 80. It's funny. It's like everyone else, I think, in the world is like dying to retire. Like they want to retire as soon as possible, especially people that have $200 million. I think they'd retire as early as possible. But for some reason, these guys, they want to keep going. They've got the money, they've got everything, they've had a successful career, but they want to keep going. So, anyway, give that some thought. That seriously to me is a tremendous red flag, and it kind of shows there is ancillary things going on in the background and ulterior motives. And again, this is the Democrats and the Republicans. That actually, I'm so glad it's that because you can't pick a hole in this thesis because we're attacking it from both sides. Okay, switching gears, I wanted to talk about this because I thought it was incredibly interesting. Huntington Beach, California, which is about 15 minutes north of where I live, maybe 20 minutes, they actually came out and they passed a city ordinance that preemptive, it's like a preemptive strike, but they banned any ability for mask mandates as well as vaccine mandates in the future. So this is pretty interesting. It does seem cases, well, what they're defining as cases are rising again, and, time will tell if COVID rears its head again or if there's something else or another version or something like that. But the question is, and, I'd ask you to ask yourself this, like, are you going to be okay with doing what we did in 2020? I think that's something everybody potentially needs to ask themselves. And that is, what do they think is appropriate if this happens again, if there's a round two on kind of what took place in 2020? So I thought it was interesting that Huntington Beach kind of basically, again, did a preemptive strike on this. Now, I will say that they were definitely a city that kind of caused a ruckus and went against the grain in the first go round. So in a lot of ways, this doesn't surprise me, but I'll be curious if other cities and ordinances and potentially even states, probably Florida to lead, maybe Texas, if they try and, pass a preemptive strike on mask mandates and then potential future vaccine mandates. So keep an eye out on that. We'll, I'm sure, talk about that in more detail as well as time goes on and as we get into the winter. By the way, I did want to say something, and I will share this. I got COVID twice. The first time I got it was in July of 2021. Yeah, actually, I got it on July 4th, 2021. I started feeling bad on the 5th. And I'm not going to lie, that thing kicked my butt round one. About 7 days of, it was a different feeling for me. I'd never felt sick like that. My symptoms mainly were just fatigue. Like I was exhausted. Absolutely exhausted. And for a stretch of 2 or 3 days, I will say, God, it's just kind of scary to think back. I had some hallucinations. Like I thought daytime was nighttime. I thought nighttime was daytime. My poor mom called to check on me at like 8 o'clock at night. And I yelled at her because I'm like, Mom, why are you calling me this early? I told you not to call me. I'll call you when I wake up. And she's like, it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm like, no, it's not. It's 8 in the morning. I'm not even kidding. I really thought that was the case. And then this is even weirder. I actually thought that it was 8 in the morning, and then I looked out my window and, obviously it was dark and I saw all the street lights. And so I literally thought that this is going to sound crazy, but I literally thought that we were at war with China and they had blocked out the sun. I'm not even kidding. Anyway, my point of all that is, regardless of whatever is the case with COVID, it definitely was and is a real something, and it absolutely kicked my butt on round two or round one. Round two I got in January of 2022, and that was nothing. Like that literally basically did not even stop me. So anyway, there's that. The last thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm going to do an episode on this week, is so there was a G20 summit in India over the weekend. It ended, I believe, on Saturday. And I'm going to really dive into this, but I'm going to say right now, this whole G20 thing, the crazy part about it is, it's being held in India. You've got Brazil there, and then you've got the United States, France, all the NATO countries. Now, Putin wasn't there, but a representative from Russia was. And so it's just weird to me. It's like, on one side, these guys, Brazil, Russia, China, South Africa, India, they've got their BRICS alliance, which I talked about in episode number 3. And then now they're getting together in India for this G20 conference. And you've got, the United States, Great Britain, France, all that. So I'm going to really delve into this. But again, these global politics, the geopolitics, there's more to it than meets the eye. Let's just say that. And if we can agree on that, then we can look through the lens of common sense and try and make sense of really what this is all about. But there's a lot more than meets the eye. And like I talked about in a previous episode, are they all in on it together? Is it just a big charade? Along with the BRICS in I think that was 3. Episode 4, I talked about the CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies. And so are all these country global distractions basically something that is enabling these guys to get their individual country CBDCs in place? Over 110 countries are working on this or either are implementing it. They're at a certain stage with this. So anyway, just something else to keep on the radar. I'm digging into that, and I'll bring you more information as I get it. All right, everybody, that's about it for today. Remember, just like we did in this episode, let's call a spade, and we'll talk to you soon.
This episode was brought to you by Boost Liquid Vitamins. Wake up, take your Boost, start your day. Drink your vitamins, build your immune system with Boost. Available on Boost.com.